Hello there, I'm Dave from Dynobike. Today I have Harley XL1200 48. It's got a breather kit on it, B&H radius exhaust, and we are tuning it. I guess the difficult thing that I see it a lot on these bikes is that often guys will just put a tune into it. They don't know where it's come from, but it sort of matches what they've done to it. In this case, as I said, breather kit and radius exhaust. But more often than not, it's way too rich, and it's also way too lean. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a moment. You see places here where it is rich, and there's other places where it's super duper lean. And so often it becomes a bit confusing for guys trying to match everything up, and ultimately they end up here. So first, before I go anywhere with this, we don't use any aftermarket add-on tools to tune these bikes or any bikes. We don't use anybody else's DIY software. We don't pay for tuning licenses and all that sort of thing. We have our own high-end professional tools that we use exclusively to tune all motorcycles. So if you're thinking you've got a Harley, you've bought it second hand and you don't have the Screaming Eagle tuner anymore, and you're looking at maybe a Power Vision, and the Power Vision is, I don't know, what are they, $700-900 I think they are here in Australia, and then, well, probably need to get a tune as well. If you're coming here, you don't actually need to buy any of that stuff. All you're buying is a dyno tune, because we've already got all the tools that we need to connect to your ECU, read the file out, bang it up there, look at the graphs, modify it, and then write it safely back to the ECU. So that's the first thing I wanted to say to you about the Harley stuff. Anyway, getting back to this one here where someone's put a tune in it and it's basically all over the place. So I'll grab that what do you call it, video camera, and bring it up here, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Where it's, it's in places it's good, in places it's rich, and in places it's really lean, and they're different on each cylinder. So let's do that first. Right, so what we're looking at here is front and rear cylinder. The top one is the front cylinder, the bottom one is the rear cylinder, and we're looking at air fuel ratio. So I'll just grab this mouse here. Hopefully you can kind of see where the mouse is there. I don't know if you can, and I'll use this here instead. It's just a cursor. Okay, so here we are. If we slide this, whoops, off. Right, let's go back down here to 2600 RPM. This is at about 10% throttle, so we're just cruising along here. The rear cylinder is actually a little bit rich. It's not bad, but it is a little bit rich. Front cylinder, on the other hand, is stupid lean. It's super lean up there, up at 16, 17 parts of air to fuel, and it pretty much stays at 7 to 14, 15, 14, 15 and a half, all the way to 3.6, where it sort of stops and it won't rev out any further. Let's give it some more throttle. Whereas now the rear cylinder, on the other hand, is getting leaner and leaner as the revs build up. Right, so you can see there's quite a difference there. So we need to fix that. Let's go and have a look at another throttle position. Let me just unzoom this. Unzoom it. Alright, I'll highlight so you can see it a bit better. This is a mess. Let's fix this up. It is just... okay. Alright, so here we are now at 25% throttle. So light load, we're accelerating here. Front cylinder here. Okay, at 3.5 grand, it's rich. Gets richer. We go down here to 4 grand, it's even richer. And you look at the rear cylinder on the other hand, it's not bad. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's acceptable, to be honest. Whereas the front cylinder is quite rich at 10.5. It needs to be around 13.5, by the way. Now go back down to the bottom cylinder, it stays rich at 12 all the way through to 6 grand. Front cylinder, well, it starts out being rich. I've done it again. Unzoom all of that. Okay, it starts out being rich down here, but then it goes lean up at the top end, 5.5, 6 grand, and at 6 grand it's going even leaner again. Not good. So we've got to fix that. So that's at 25% throttle. Let's have a look at another one. So now we're at 50%. Kind of the same pattern as what we saw at 25%. So there's a bit of a pattern there. Really lean up here at 6 grand. Really rich down here at 3.5, 4 grand. Now, wide open throttle, what's that look like? Whoa. Wide open throttle is a bit of a disaster. I can actually feel it missing here. It's so lean on the front cylinder. When you crack the throttle on at 2 grand at 2.2, 2.3, it is actually off the scale lean, so not good. And then all of a sudden, it gets to 3 grand, 3.5 grand, and it goes super duper rich. It stays rich until it gets to 5. It's at about 13, which is where we want all of it. 5.5, it's gone lean again. Rear cylinder, okay, the bottom one here, the rear cylinder is not bad from 1.5 to 3, it's okay. 3.5, it's gone rich, and it gets richer and richer. Pretty much stays rich right through to 5.5, 6 grand. It comes back to 13 to 1. So we need to adjust all of that. So I'll show you using our Pro software how we adjust it all. Right, here's the file that I've just pulled out of the ECU. Right, what we're looking at here is mass flow. It's on the front cylinder. You might not be able to see this, but anyway, that's what it says. That's the front cylinder. The one highlighted, the one underneath it, this one here is the rear cylinder. It's got a whole bunch of numbers. Across the top we've got TPS from 2.3% up to 100%. You notice you've got a whole lot of extra 100%. That's just the manufacturer building in a little bit of safety margin there. If you're using a Screaming Eagle tuner or Power Vision, you won't see these extra ones here. Alright, you'll only see one row at 100. And then over here we've got RPM from 750 RPM up to 8,000. And again, my file, you'll see there is actually a whole heap of extra breakpoints here at 8,000 RPM. Again, on other tuners you won't see that. They don't put it in there, and they don't need to. Again, it's just safety margins that they build into it in case you've got a problem with a throttle position sensor, it's not accurate enough or it's not reading right. They put some safety margin into it. Alright, so the other thing that we need to have a look at is our AFR ratio. Now we've got lambda sensors running on this bike. One on the front, one on the rear. I think most of you probably know that. I've actually adjusted them here. I'm going to highlight all of that. Let's go down here. They're set to 13 now. Let's see what they look like in stock form. Alright. So stock, there's what it looks like. A whole lot of 14.1, 2, 4s. 4 grand, it gets to 13.2. But then strangely from 20% throttle to 25% it jumps back up to 14.2. I don't know why it's doing that, but anyway it is. That's how it is standard. I'm sure there's a method to their madness. And as the revs build, they actually add some fuel numbers to it so that it full load, wide open throttle, 90 to 100%. They've gone from 13.4 to 12.6. 12.6 being pretty much perfect for wide open load. There's a little bit of safety there, a bit of extra fuel going in there to keep everything nice and safe and happy. So with this one, what do we want to do? Well, If we don't change all these, no matter what I do over here on these maps at these low throttle settings, it won't make any difference, because the O2 sensor in this zone here, down in to about there somewhere, that is all controlled by the O2 sensor, right? So it doesn't matter what I put over here on these other maps. If I don't change this, get it out of closed loop, then it's going to keep reverting back to this number here, and we won't see any changes when we test. So the first job here is highlight all of this, and I'm going to make all of it up to there. All of it is going to be 13. Okay? Now, 13, you say, well, I want some fuel economy and I want some more power or a bit more safety at 100% throttle. Well, we're going to build all of that into this main fuel map here, our VE table, front and rear cylinder. We're going to build that into here. But first of all, we need to set, where is it? We need to set the lambda map. Okay, this map governs both cylinders. There isn't one for each, there's only one for 2 cylinders. So I've set that to 13. Now we could come back to that later after we've done our tune and go, okay, this particular customer says he needs to do some long rides, he really needs some fuel economy in here. And then we can use this map to build in some fuel economy. So we could then come back in here after we've tuned it and say, okay, he wants fuel economy. Let's highlight this area here. This is light load, up to about 3 grand, for example. All right, and we'll put a number in here of like 13.7. Okay. Oops, that's not 13.7. It's 15.6. Silly me. Try again. 13.7. Okay, so that area there now has less fuel going into it. All right. For economy. Now, it will still have a nice power curve, it will still have good throttle response and all the rest, but it will also still have some pretty good fuel economy with those numbers. If you want more fuel economy, well, you can change that if you want to. That's over to the individual. You don't want to go too lean, because then the bike starts to run really shitty and horrible down low. Right? And we're trying to get away from that snatchy throttle and the grumpiness and the heat that's generated as a result of it running too lean. So you could go to 14, you could go back to stoichiometric 14.7 if you want to. But if it was mine, I wouldn't go any leaner than 14, to be perfectly honest. I would keep it around the 13.6 to 13.8 in this little zone here and leave all the rest of it at 13. So there's a little bit of an insight into how all this works. I'm going to go and make some changes to my VE tables now, and that of course is all based on these fuel maps over here that we're looking at. So this is a wide open throttle on front and rear cylinder, right? I'm going to go back to here, to this one here at 100% and 80%, and I'm going to make some changes to those 2 rows there based on what these figures are here now. And we should see, after we've done a couple more runs, we should see that this line gets a lot straighter than what it is now, because right now it's pretty dysfunctional. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'll come back in a moment and we'll have a look at it. Right, so I've made some adjustments to the maps. If you're keeping an eye on the AFR ratio bars there, you see that we're in the green zone now, which is good. That's where we want to be. I'm now going to go back onto the screen here. I'll grab the video camera and we'll go over here and we'll have a closer look at what I've done and what the actual AFR maps look like at a few different breakpoints. So here we go. Alright, so back on our maps again. Let's just have a look at the air fuel ratios and compare what it was when we started with what it is now. So we'll just go over to here. I'll swing this thing around to here. Alright. Let's highlight. So, for example, let's highlight this one here. You can see now that this is at, put in the notes here, 12, meaning 12% throttle. The blue one is what we started off with. So it was, let's get that cursor happening again. Show cursor. There we go. So as you can see on both cylinders, really quite rich. The rear one dangerously not rich, lean, really quite lean, dangerously lean on the rear cylinder. It's actually off the scale. So we've made adjustments to the fuel maps that I showed you before, and now we have comparatively made it much nicer. So that's pretty good. 12%. That's predominantly cruising. You know, nothing wrong with that. That's a good looking fuel map. Let's have a look at another one. So let's look at wide open throttle, for example. So again, the blue one's where we were. I mean, look at this mess. It's just an absolute shocker. Alright. Now let's flick over to the red one. That's a nice straight line. It's bang on 13.2. Exactly what we want. There's nothing wrong with that. That's going to be a noticeable improvement for the customer. So let's have a look at another one just for the fun of it. Look at 25%. Look at that, 25. There's what it is now. Again, it's a lovely straight line at around about 13. 25 over here. Well, stock file, which is the blue line. Again, fairly ordinary comparatively speaking. So we have pretty much tuned this bike. It's very much ready to go. There's one other thing that we can also build into this tune now, which I did speak of earlier, and it's to do with those, or that AFR map, the one that pulls the O2s in and out of closed loop. So if we now go back to that, and I just got to adjust this camera again so we can go back in there. Back over to, yeah. Alright, so these are fuel maps. Let's go and have a look at this AFR closed loop. So as I was saying in here, I can now adjust these here accordingly. And when I do, that will make a slight variation on those fuel maps, on those fuel curves that I was showing you before. And we can now start to build in a little bit of economy down in this area here, which I've done. I've set these low speed and cruising ones to 14, okay, which will take a little bit of fuel out. You'll have some economy and still have a nice running bike that won't overheat. And he might get a little bit further than he's currently getting between fuel stations. So bear in mind, this bike has a very, very small tank. You don't get very far on these ones, so it's pretty handy to be able to do this and give the guy a chance to get a little bit further down the road before he needs to fill up. And one last thing, I guess you're all curious to know, how much power has this bike got before we did the tune and then after we did the tune. So let's now go back and have a look at that graph. Okay, so now that we're pretty happy with the fuel maps that we've got there, let's go and now have a look at our overall horsepower figure. Let's see if we've improved on it. That wide open throttle, I'm sure that's what you guys all want to have a look at. So let's shoot back there now to that one. I'll graph that. It's going to have a look at horsepower. And there we go. So the blue one is what we had to start off with. It's that one there. Dirty big hole there. If you remember rightly, on the front cylinder it was off the scale lean in this zone here. Now that we've corrected that, it's nice in there. 2 grand, 2.5 grand, perfect. We've managed to get a bit more horsepower right through the rev range, right up to red line. If we highlight the run after we've made our changes, that's all looking pretty good if you ask me. Let's have a look at the torque curve. So we'll find that the torque curve is also showing us some nice improvements. This bit down in here is really bad. It's now not so bad. It's good. I like it. This bike is ready to go. I'll go and tidy up a few tiny little areas there that I noticed before when still not quite right. Fix them up and get this bike out. That's about it. If you're interested in any of the tunes, there's a link below the video here. You can click on that, it'll take you to the Harley page. There's also exhaust systems, breather kits and a few other things available through the online store, which the link is just below this video also. So feel free to go and have a look at any of that stuff. If you have any questions, you can call us or email us. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions moving forward. So anyway, thanks for watching. That's about it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Dave from Dynobike.